It was a Sunday night, March 2021, about a month after Snowpocalypse. And my 15-year-old child, Logan, was crying into my shoulder in our hotel room in Sunset Valley, saying, "I just want to go home." And I was with them. I wanted to go home too, even if I was still having a little more of a sense of adventure as them. But we couldn't, because for the second time in 2 months, Mother Nature had rendered our home completely uninhabitable. It had started the day before, on Saturday, at about 4:45 in the morning, when I was jolted out of REM sleep by a smell. I couldn't quite tell what it was. Maybe it was gas. Maybe somebody had just taken their shoes off after not wearing socks in them for a week. Maybe it was the sewer. I didn't know. I got up to start looking around, and what I did know was the smell was so powerful that it was only after a few minutes of walking around the house that I realized the dog was also barking. And then Chris was up, looking around, trying to figure out what it was too. And we wandered outside of the house, and the smell was out there as well. And so were our next door neighbors, who'd also been woken up by this smell. And soon we were joined by 2 fire trucks responding to the neighbor's 311 call. And when the first fire truck parked in front of the neighbor's house and the lead fireman jumped out, he said the word that made us recognize what this smell was: skunk. He had smelled it 2 blocks away. Now, I'm going to tell you, I have smelled skunk at the side of the road, and when I was a kid in Eastern Washington, a skunk got into our garage and sprayed, but I don't remember the smell being quite this powerful, because I guess even skunk smell is bigger in Texas. But the firemen went, and they looked around our yard and the neighbor's yard, trying to find the source of the smell, and they found it. This chartreuse green set of splatter marks on our floor-to-ceiling living room windows that faced our backyard. The best we could figure was that the skunk had been happily walking through our yard. Our dog spotted the skunk and started barking to let it know that it needed to get out of its territory and probably off the planet. And the skunk, not understanding the concept of plate glass, decided it had to defend itself and sprayed. And that was what woke us up. Now, all of this activity had also woken up our kids, who were 15 and 13, and they did not want to be in the house with that smell. They did not want to be in the yard with that smell. The only place they would agree to be was inside the car, because somehow that was a bubble that didn't smell as bad as everywhere else in the neighborhood. So one set of their grandparents, fortunately, were super early risers and didn't live that far away, so we went and took the kids to their house to hang out and get a break from the smell. And then we madly started trying to figure out what we were going to do. We went to our friend, Google, to look for remedies on how you clean up skunk smell. And just a note, tomato juice doesn't work. That's a myth. So instead, we used some combination of bleach and dish soap to clean everything off the windows. We cleaned up the leaves that were around that might have gotten smelled. We were washing off the bricks. We opened all the doors and windows to air out the house, and we started boiling some vinegar because that was supposed to help clean out the air. And then, with nothing much left to do with it, we went about our business. Chris went up to his office. I went to go take our younger kid, Tab, to their horseback riding lesson. A couple hours pass. Tab and I are in the car, leaving the horse barn, and my phone rings, and I can see on the car console, it's Chris calling me, checking in. I answer, and his voice comes through the car speakers. "Don't bother coming home." Now, these are words that kind of usually might signal the end of a marriage or something. But fortunately, I knew it was not my relationship that stank, it was just the house. So I said, "Okay, could you grab my phone charger, because I forgot it on my way out the door, and I'll meet you at your parents' house." And he said, "No, Susan, you don't understand. I can't go inside. The skunk is in the house." There is a skunk in my house. Upon hearing this news, I do the only thing that an empathetic spouse can do. I bust out laughing. As does my kid. We're laughing so hard I have to pull over by the side of the road while we're listening to Chris explain that he'd been upstairs in his office and he heard the dog barking with that "I need to take something off the planet" kind of bark. And he goes to check it out, and he looks underneath the piece of furniture that the dog's very interested in, and he sees a white stripe. And he thinks, "I'm out of here." He grabs the dog, he runs out the doors and shuts them behind him, only then realizing this is backwards. I have now ceded my home to the skunk, who's somewhere in there having a skunk party because I didn't shut any of the doors of the room the skunk is in. So clearly he was not as amused by this as I was, because he was the one madly trying to get a hold of a wildlife company to remove the skunk, and none of them are answering because it's Saturday. So while we're on the phone, his phone beeps, and it's a wildlife specialist, and we hang up, and I go to take the kid to his parents' house and try to keep the kids calm because they're not very happy about this. And then he calls and tells me that they got the skunk out, but not without it spraying. And the place where it sprayed, it had found its way into this crawl space underneath our stairs that you kind of have to go from our powder room right at the front of the house to get into it. It also happens to be the only place in our house that has unpainted exposed wood that's just probably really hungry to suck up that skunk oil and hang on to it for dear life. So I try to think of who I can call to fix this for us, because we just aren't that much of DIY people that we really want to clean up skunk smell ourselves. So I call a friend who's a contractor, and I call our handyman service, and I call a friend who's a realtor, and they all have maybe some suggestions to help us clean it up. None of them know of a service who will do it for us. And my realtor friend actually posts on her realty interest group to see if anyone else knows, and the only suggestion she got was that someone had heard that douche can get rid of a skunky odor, and somehow that didn't really seem like the answer. So we had to dig in, and my sweet husband, Chris, he goes and he starts with the bleach underneath the stairs, and we put vinegar out, and he goes and finds some paint that's supposed to lock in the smell when you paint a wall with it. And I go to the pet store because I don't know if somebody suggested it occurred to me that those pet enzyme candles might help clean the air because they're supposed to get rid of animal smells. But the problem is that it's March and we're kind of close to Christmas. So they still have Christmas candles, but they don't have more than one of any given scent. So I get candy cane and autumn harvest and butter pecan, all of which smelled great. And I go and I spread them around the house and I light them. And we spend a couple days on this project. And we go and we stay in the hotel the first night. And then the second day, while Chris is working, I am grabbing clothes to wash at my mother-in-law's because I don't want my kids to accidentally smell like skunk when they go to school the next day. And I'm dealing with kids, he's dealing with house. And all of these efforts to make everything smell better, I experienced the result on Sunday afternoon when we go to check on the house, and I walk in the front door and my nose is assaulted by nutmeg and cinnamon and butter pecan and peppermint and vinegar and bleach and paint and skunk with an intensity that makes me want to cry or vomit or both at the same time. I don't know. It was very confusing. So our efforts had actually made things worse at first. And now here we were with my nose recovering from the trauma and my kid experiencing these really traumatic feelings about not being safe in their house because of the smell. And my effort to make it better just isn't working. But we went to sleep that night. And the next day, we got the kids up and we took them to school. And they got into more of a normal routine. And we went into the house. We found out that the back of the house was usable. And the upstairs was usable. We just had to stay away from the front. And day by day, the smell lessened. The feelings lessened. And time plus effort did what time alone had not. and diminish the trauma. Now, I'm not going to tell you that the skunk smell is totally gone, because on a hot July day, if I go to use that powder room, I still get a whiff of musk. But now, it's not obnoxious or overpowering. It's actually kind of pleasant, like an undernote that can combine with other smells that have come through with memories of other smells that have come through my house, like breast milk and diapers and birthday cakes come and gone, and bacon sandwiches and times at the horse barn. And all of these combine to form the wonderful perfume that is our family story.